Um, Hare Krishna. Um, just wanted to know if you're able to hear me clearly, or am I audible? I mean, is there a way that I can know this? Shailesh, maybe if you're able to hear me. Um, okay, cool. All right. Thank you, Gurpreet. Let me start with some invocation prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, Shailesh and other organizers, thank you for inviting me to address the youth. We are in the midst of a crisis. We are in a time which is very unsettling, which is very difficult to understand. And this uncertain period brings tension, anxiety, difficulty, moroseness, all this kind of problems. And often in these times, people think, can spirituality help? Can does spirituality have any solution to offer? Well, the answer is yes. We should not forget that the most potent message of Bhagavad Gita was delivered in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. It was not done in an ashram or in a ISKCON temple or in some mountain top. No, in the midst of crisis, when Arjuna faced the biggest existential problem, where he had to kill his own relatives, that's when Krishna imparted this knowledge, which removed his doubts, which removed his confusion. So spirituality actually prepares one for this kind of eventuality. This is not something that people practice when things are going right. No, it is meant to be practiced in all circumstances, in all situations. Um, I'm reminded of one quote by W.B. Yeats. He's a famous English poet, and recently in America we had this Easter festival, very popular amongst the Christians. So where in way back in 1914, when it was in the midst of World War One, he had written this poem that how suddenly things have changed. Change has come, and cruelly, and suddenly, and now there is a dark beauty in front of us. Something in that line. It's just one line of that poem. If we look our lives now, few months back, things were different. And all of a sudden, there is a change which has happened. There is some things which have changed so much, which is unwelcome, which is uncomfortable, and yet we have to accept the change. We are forced to remain in our houses. We can't freely go out and mingle with people. All of a sudden, things have changed. So, what do we do in this kind of a situation? What spirituality has to offer in this? Interestingly, this situation that we are put in, the spiritual perspective is this is called uh, sankata or a danger. And what one can do is remember or realize that this material world, the nature, like, everything has got a nature. A person has a nature. The universe has a particular nature. Similarly, this material world nature is padam padam yad vipadam. In every step, there is danger. It is not the danger of coronavirus that we are facing, or the COVID-19 situation, which has created so much of fear, anxiety, or moroseness. No, even otherwise, in every step in this material world, we have danger. That is what the Bhagavatam verse says. I'm reminded of our Acharya Srila Prabhupada. Once he was getting interviewed by a press reporter, and that was a time when there was an India-Pakistan war which was going on, and there was curfew and blackout, and suddenly there was some siren which was going. That means there is possibly there is going to be some bomb attack, and everybody dodged down. At that time, when Prabhupada was asked by this reporter, um, you are talking about danger. Uh, what is your view now? What do you think? Prabhupada said something which is very striking. Prabhupada said that doesn't matter what situation we are in, doesn't matter where we are. Actually, the death rate is always 100%. The mortality rate is always 100%. So if that is the thing, what can we do? What is the solution? I'm reminded of few verses from Bhagavatam, and I would like to share those with you. They give tremendous hope, tremendous strength, tremendous solace in this time of crisis. One is, these are all very famous verses. These are all very famous incidents in Bhagavatam. One is the mention of Prahlad Maharaj, the 5-year-old devotee who was protected by the Lord, who appeared in the form of Narasimha, half man, half lion. When Lord Narasimhadev tore apart his father, the demoniac father, Hiranyakashipu, he was so angry and so furious that to pacify him, nobody could dare to go in front of him. And finally, it was Prahlad Maharaj who was forced to go and pacify Lord Narasimhadev. And when he does that, he offers this wonderful prayer, which is a very great source of inspiration. What he says is, Balasya neha saranam pitarau nrsimha nartasya chagadam mudanvati majjato nauhu taptasya tat pratividhiryahi anjasestas Tavad vibhotanughritam tvadupekshitanam. It's a very beautiful verse. I'll just read the translation. The translation goes something like this. My Lord Narasimhadev, O Supreme, because of a bodily conception of life, embodied souls, neglected and not cared for by you, cannot do anything for their betterment. Whatever remedies they accept, although perhaps temporarily beneficial, are certainly impermanent. For example, a father and a mother cannot protect their child. A physician and medicine cannot relieve a suffering patient, and a boat on the ocean cannot protect a drowning man. There are many words which are used, and this I'll just spend whatever little time we have in understanding this verse, and something that we can understand the current situation that we are in. One of the words which is used in this verse, and I would recommend you can look up to this verse afterwards. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 9th chapter, 19th verse. 7, 9, 19. So here there is a word which Prahlad Maharaj is using, is called upekshitana. Tad upekshitana. That means who are neglected by the Lord and who are not accepted by you. Tad upekshitana. If somebody is neglected by the Lord, who are neglected by you and not accepted by you, then what happens to them? So he's saying, O Lord, because of the bodily conception of life, embodied souls, which is all of us, bodily conception of life means we accept our body to be our true identity. So embodied souls, they're neglected and they're not cared by you. And what happens? Because of that, perhaps temporarily So they look for some solution. They look for some temporary beneficial solution, which is not permanent. Even though it may give us some temporary relief, but it cannot give us permanent solution. And he gives three examples over here. First is about like a fish who's caught in the net, and another fish who's there. And if that other fish is telling, "I will protect you," how can another fish who is also caught in the net can protect this fish? It cannot. And then he talks about maybe this kind of thought that we have, maybe a doctor or a medicine can protect us, but he's saying a physician and medicine also cannot relieve a suffering patient. And the third example he's giving is a boat on the ocean cannot protect a drowning man. There may be a boat, but if a drowning man does not know to reach the boat, or if he cannot reach there, even if the boat is there, it cannot protect him. Basically, what it says is, and this is very interesting and important to know. If we keep displeasing our Supreme Father, we shall never be happy within this material world in either the upper or lower planetary systems. So it doesn't matter if we have all the material avenues, all the opulences, all the means to enjoy this life. If we are displeasing our Father, if we are displeasing the Supreme Lord, then we can never be happy within this material world, neither the upper or lower planetary systems. This is a very important point, because we forget this. We forget our relationship with the Lord, and we forget the nature of this material world, which in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna very nicely explains. This is dukkhalayam asasvatam. This is a place of misery, and this is asasvatam. This is temporary. This is impermanent. But what we do is, forgetting the nature of material world, we seek permanence. We seek happiness. And remember the words that I used, which Krishna uses, dukkhalayam and asasvatam. This is a place of misery, and this is temporary. So in a temporary and miserable place, when we look permanence and happiness, we often get disappointed. And the other thing which we forget is the relationship that we have, each one of us we have with the Lord. And this forgetfulness of the Lord creates all kinds of miseries, all kinds of difficulties. There are many countless examples which Bhagavatam talks about how one can learn get some inspiration. I will just quote, keeping the time in hand, I will quote three things. One is from the life of Narad Muni, where he is telling that in this material world, like we are not hankering for miseries, they are coming on their own, but all of us, we hanker for happiness. Right? We work hard, we do various kinds of things so that we can be happy. But he's saying, like miseries come on their own without asking for it, similarly the happiness also comes. We all have a fixed quota of happiness and miseries. So he's saying, Narad Muni is saying, persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful end which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet down to the lowest planet. So they should endeavor only for that purposeful end which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet down to the lowest planet. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in course of time, just as in course of time we obtain miseries even though we do not desire them. Nobody wants miseries in this life, but miseries are forced. Similarly, happiness, whatever we are supposed to experience, will come. We should not be too much worried about how to obtain happiness. This will come. There is a quota of happiness for each one of us. But what Narad Muni is saying that is we should endeavor for that purposeful end, which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet down to the lowest planet. So basically, having got this human form of life where we have got this developed intelligence, we should inquire about something which is more sublime, which is more powerful. And this message of inquiring about something sublime and powerful is reiterated in various places, including in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu. So he's telling this knowledge has to be received by the Raja, by the kings. So evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu. The Rajas or the kings are the leaders of the society. They can influence the society. They can guide the society by their conduct, by their behavior, and they should receive this knowledge. But the important word which our acharyas point us, that it is not just some ordinary kings, Raja Rishis, that Raja also should have saintly character. And the saintly character is something which we forget. We aspire to become a Raja, we aspire to become king, but we forget that we should also develop those saintly characters. If you see, it is not just the Vedic philosophy which talks about this. Even Western philosophers. If you take the example, there is a professor, Canadian professor by name Jordan Peterson. He has written this wonderful essay, and I'll just mention a few lines of that. Very, very powerful. He says, "This world is a terrible place to live. This is a terrible place to live. You will experience miseries one after another despite your best efforts to avoid them." And he says something which is very powerful. You must have a purpose, meaning, direction in life, and that should be noble and sublime. Something that is worth pursuing, something that gets you out of the bed every morning. Not just pursuit of happiness or wealth or security, because those pursuits are going to disappoint you in life. It is a catastrophe to not have a large, grand purpose in life. So that is something spirituality does. It brings purpose. It brings such a meaning, a vision, which is noble and sublime. So now, so if that is the case, see, imagine, like, to understand this a little more. If I give a practical example, let's say somebody is doing a survey of all the people who are traveling in car, and you are asking them, where are you coming from and where are you going? Somebody may say that, well, I'm coming from this place and I'm going to the mall, or I'm coming from this place and I'm going to drop off my child in the school. I'm coming from another place and I'm going to go to the hospital, something like that. But you come across somebody who says, well, I don't know where I'm coming from and where I'm going, where are you heading to? I'm just drifting, I'm just driving along, let's see. Or says that, I'm just following all the traffic rules. I've got a lot of gas in my car. I just want to exhaust and just want to go and follow the traffic rules and regulations. No, actually, it is not that, we should not pursue about material prosperity, wealth, and family, and all those things. That should be done. But while doing that, there should be another purpose, a higher meaning. And that purpose, if it is lacking, we will always be disappointed. And that is exactly what Narad Muni is saying, that, like distress, miseries are coming on their own, similarly, happiness will come. It is not worthy to, go after this happiness. Rather, one should inquire about something more sublime, something more valuable. And that, as per the Vedic scripture, is inquiring about Brahman. Now, having said this, in this kind of danger and in this kind of crisis, what can we do? What can we learn? I'm reminded of one very famous story from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the story of a big elephant, a king who was the king of the jungle, and he's known as Gajendra. So this Gajendra once was, he was in a sankat, he was in a crisis, and what he did, what we can learn from his life. So I'll just chant this verse. Bear with me. It's Sanskrit, but very, very powerful, very nice. These are prayers offered by Gajendra. So he's saying, "Itham Gajendra sayatapa sankatam pranasya dehi vivato yadrichaya aparayannatma vimokshane chiram dadhaya imam buddhim atha padyata." So what happened? This is a very beautiful episode in Bhagavatam, which mentions this king of the elephants, Gajendra. He was caught by this crocodile, and this happened by the will of the providence. Gajendra, the strength of this elephant is mentioned in Bhagavatam, very mighty. When he used to walk, if he brushes along the trees on the sides, the trees used to get uprooted. So he, along with his generals and wives, they went to this beautiful beautiful lake in Trikuta forest, and the beauty of that forest is also very nicely described in Bhagavatam. And he was fearless. He had tremendous confidence on his own abilities, and his generals and his wives, they had just gone to do a water sport, to engage in some kind of jalakrida. So they went and they were just taking bath and throwing water on each other, and suddenly this crocodile caught this elephant, the king of the elephant, Gajendra. And then what did he do? So the translation of this verse, actually, when the king of the elephant saw that he was under the clutches of the crocodile by the will of the providence, and being embodied and circumstantially helpless, could not save himself from danger. He was extremely afraid of being killed. He consequently thought for a long time and finally reached the following decision. So there are many interesting words which are used. So none of us want this kind of dangers or miseries, but we are circumstantially put into this kind of a situation. Some circumstances are created where we are encountered, where we face this kind of miseries, or this is called not just misery, this is sankata. It's a dangerous position. You're put into that kind of a situation, and we realize how helpless we are. See, like Gajendra, he was thinking, I'm just untouched. I've got so much of power. I've got so much of strength. I can do anything. But then when he was caught by the crocodile, he saw that he cannot save himself from danger. And he got very afraid of being killed. It is like you're in the jaws of death. So he was very afraid of being killed. Like that, actually, our scriptures and acharyas say, like Gajendra, who does not belong to the water. Since it's an animal of the land, its strength diminished, whereas crocodile, being the animal of the water, its strength increased. So this battle went on for 1,000 years, 1,000 years, not our human calculations, 1,000 years of celestial calculation. And this battle went on. And he looked for help from his generals. They also tried to pull him, but they also left. And Gajendra also was helpless. He's saying that his death is imminent. There is no way that he can come out. What he did is very important. But one important thing to learn from here is, like Gajendra, who was an animal of the land, didn't belong to the water. Similarly, all of us, we do not belong to this material world. And that is why our strength diminishes. How does it diminish? It diminishes by these four problems, these four miseries which are there in the four corners of our existence: birth, death, old age, and disease. Diseases come, death come, snatches away everything. There is old age. You ask a person who's old, you'll have a lot of sobering thoughts. The inability to do things can be very nicely experienced and seen from the experience of an old man. And we don't realize that very soon we are also going to grow old, because there is a crushing wheel of time which acts on all of us, which takes away all these things. So Gajendra, like Gajendra was an animal of land, and it diminished its strength. Similarly, all of us, we belong to spiritual world. We are all spirit souls, part and parcel of the Lord. Because of our misidentification with this body, we try to remain here permanently in a happy position, and these miseries come on us. This threefold miseries, and this kind of miseries like birth, death, old age, and disease, it comes in one way or other. What interestingly Gajendra did, and with that I'll conclude, and that's a very powerful thing. When he saw that his friends and relatives have deserted him, they could not rescue him from this danger. Actually, it is mentioned his wives were shedding tears. His wives were having confidence that Gajendra would protect us in our times of crisis, in those dangerous moments. But now this is a helpless situation for Gajendra himself. So it is not that they didn't want to help, but they could not help. So there is a situation where we have, first we have faith and conviction and confidence in our own abilities, in our own, financial strength, in the confidence in our friends and relatives who are always there with us. But here, the other elephants, who are friends and relatives, could not rescue him from this danger. What then to speak of my wives? They cannot do anything. It is by the will of the providence that I have been attacked by this crocodile, and therefore I shall seek shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is always the shelter of everyone, even of great personalities. So Gajendra came to this wonderful conclusion that he should take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the shelter of all shelters. There's a word which is used called Param Parayanam. He's the shelter of all shelters. And he did that. And how he did that? Very wonderfully. श्रीबादरायणरुवाच एवं व्यवस्थितो बुद्ध्या समाधाय मनोहृदि जजाप परमं जाप्यं प्राग्जन्मनि अनुशिक्षितम्. Very interestingly, we don't realize how spirituality can help us in our times of crisis. This Gajendra, who was there in the body of an elephant, was a devotee in his previous life. His name was Indradimna, and he was engaged in some devotional service. So when he was caught up in this crisis, in this danger, what did he do? The king of the elephants, Gajendra, fixed his mind in his heart with perfect intelligence and chanted a mantra which he had learned in his previous birth as Indradimna, and which he remembered by the grace of Krishna. So he got this intelligence to chant this mantra which he had remembered in his previous life. And in this commentary, Srila Prabhupada is saying that each one of us should learn to practice chanting some mantras. These are not some ordinary sound vibration, especially this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Under all circumstances, we should chant, because this can help us protect this crisis. I would like to conclude with this and see if you have any thoughts with a quote from one very famous Vaishnava poet by name Bilva Mangal Thakur, who has written a composition called Govinda Damodara Madhaveti. In that, the last verse, he sings, very beautiful. If you get a chance, you can look up to that. He says, Vaktum samartho vinavakti na kasche aho jananam vyasanabhimukhyam pivve jivasamritame tadeva Govinda Damodara Madhaveti Govinda Damodara Madhaveti Govinda Damodara Madhaveti. What this verse is saying is Vaktum Samartho. Like all of us, we have got this ability to do something. Vaktum Samartho. Samartho means the ability. Vaktum means to speak. All of us, we've got this ability to chant this powerful names of Krishna, of this mantra, Bhaktum Samartho. Vinavakti na kaschit. Whereas we don't do this, we don't chant. Why? Aho Jananam. Aho in Sanskrit means alas, alas. Aho Jananam. Oh, alas, oh people, how you are so attached to Vyasanabhimukhyam, so engrossed in Vyasanabhimukhyam, in your sense gratification. Aho Jananam Vyasanabhimukhyam. That you are not realizing pivve jivasa, in our tongue we can experience nectar, pivve jivasa mritameta deva, just by chanting Govinda Damodara Madhaveti. So actually all of us in our in whichever position we are in, whoever we may be, we should understand this important message of the Vedic scriptures, what it is trying to say, apply that in our lives, and after we do that, doesn't matter what situation we are in which condition we are in, we will never be morose, we will never be disappointed. Gautam Buddha says this material world is a place of miseries, and he describes this by two ways. It's like if a person is shot with an arrow, it's very painful, very miserable. So he's saying, imagine if the person is shot with an arrow and immediately there is another arrow which is shot. So he's telling the first arrow represents what the world does to us. We are inflicted with COVID-19. Or there is some insult, there is some pain which is inflicted on us. That is the first arrow. The second arrow is what we do when we are faced with that kind of a situation, those kind of fears which arise, the lamentation which comes, the anxiety which comes out of it, the depression which comes out of it. That is the second arrow. And Gautam Buddha says spirituality can take care of the miseries arising because of the second arrow. For the first arrow, we have to follow all the instructions given by the medical, by the doctors, by the medical professionals, and all others. We should take all those precautions. but for the second arrow, we can certainly take help of spirituality. Mark Twain had mentioned once, this famous quote: "There are two important days in a person's life: the day when he is born, and the second one when he finds out why." Most of us, we don't go to the second part, second question. We always remain in the first thing. We just celebrate our birthday. So it is important, that we are forced in this kind of a situation to remain in a lockdown situation. We should pause, introspect, and think, who am I? What am I? Why am I put into this kind of a situation? What is my role compared to this whole universe? What is my role? Who am I with respect to the Supreme Lord? What's my position with respect to them? In life, we are so caught up, busy in chasing, running, and doing, achieving some things. We don't stop. We are not human doing. We are actually human being. We should just pause sometime and see who is this human being? Who am I? And that can lead to wonderful answers. I'll be conscious of the time, and I'll probably stop here and see if you have any questions or comments. Okay, I see one question by Soham. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, my question is, how do youth programs help the community? And at the same time, how does youth work impact on the local community? You see, interestingly, this is a very good question, I would say. See, when we take birth, after that, our body is constantly growing. As time passes by, we say he has become, he's going to school, he's going to college, and we can see the visible change in our body. Externally, we have grown. Sometimes, and it is true also, our intelligence grows, right? We say the child, doesn't have enough intelligence to take care of so many things. But as we grow, our intelligence also grows. But one needs to ask oneself, when I'm growing in my body, when I'm growing with my intelligence, am I growing with my emotions as well? Is my emotional quotient also increasing? Need not be, unless one pays attention or one is doing something about it. And now, even more important than emotional quotient is spiritual quotient. What emotional quotient does is, when somebody is put into a real life situation, crushed, insult, provoking situation, these are realities of life. We can't shy away from this, saying that this I'm not going to be subjected to. No, we will be put into those kind of a situation. But if we have a developed EQ, I can better face them. So similarly, the other thing which is now most talked about is SQ. What is our spiritual quotient? Because a person who has got high spiritual quotient automatically has got high EQ and IQ. So that person is better equipped to face all the difficulties and the reversals in life. So your question as to how does youth work impact on the local community? People, see, remember, walk the talk. If we have good spiritual quotient, by our conduct, by our behavior, by our actions, we can inspire people. It is not something which is taught in university, but this is something which we can learn from the Vedic scriptures. Hello, sir. Do you think spirituality should be confined to only religion? I mean, one can feel spiritual by absorbing the fact that we all are made up of star stuff, and there are commonalities in every species as we have evolved. Where is the question? We have evolved from a single-celled organism. Perceiving this scientific paradigm is a spiritual experience in itself. And so is getting to know our place in the universe and accepting it. It's a nice question. I would say that having come to the US and working here as a Hindu chaplain for last almost it is 3 years, I came across this term, which is very popular here. I'm not sure how popular it is in India. It's called SBNR, spiritual but not religious. Right. So nowadays, this word spirituality is used in so many different contexts, and it is so misused and misunderstood. often we also, you know, don't get exactly what the meaning of the word spirituality is. I want to talk about two things regarding spirituality. First thing is, spirituality is not just a state of happiness. There are some people who say, well, Swamiji, when I go in the morning for my morning walks or my, those jogs in the early morning, I get those gush of fresh air and I feel so happy, rejuvenated, and energized. And that's what spirituality means to me. Or somebody says, I dance a lot, Swamiji. So when I'm dancing, I get into that zone where I experience some kind of calm, some kind of peace, and that's what spirituality is all about. My answer to them is, this is not what exactly spirituality is, or this is not what the Vedic scriptures offer. Spirituality is another dimension of our life which we are unaware of. And by knowing that dimension of life, we can permanently remain in that state of happiness, which we are now considering it to be spirituality. So, spirituality is not a state of happiness, it is another dimension of our life which we are unaware of. For example, I can see my body grossly, externally, right? The gross body. I know that there is inside my mind and intelligence, because my mind sometimes it gets crazy. I mean, there are some insane thoughts which come. Something happens. I don't feel like, there is no mood. All these kind of words we use. That's referring to our mind. So there is a dimension which is inside, which I'm not able to see, but I'm cognizant of its presence. So spirituality is another dimension. There is a spirit soul which is within our body, which is conscious, which is sentient. The person, when he dies, that consciousness leaves the body. That sentience, that the fact that he's aware is no more there. It's gone. And that is that dimension of our life we are ignorant of. Spirituality is about reawakening that dimension of our life. And by doing so, we can remain permanently in that state of happiness. This is number one. The second thing is, when I heard the first time, I'm an ardent fan of science, being a science student myself. When I heard first time when Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, Bhumirapo analavayu kham manobuddhirevacha ahankara itiyam me bhinna prakritir ashtatha. He's saying our gross body is made up of this Pancha Mahabhuta. Pancha Mahabhuta is Bhumi, earth, Apo is water, Anala is fire, Kham is ether, and Kham Mano, Bhumi, Apo, Anala, Vayu. Sorry, Vayu is air, and Kham is ether, five gross elements. So when I heard that, this somehow didn't go well with my scientific bend of mind, where, we are told that our body has got this endocrine system, digestion system, cardiovascular system. So when all these things are there, how can somebody say that it is made up of just some five gross elements? But then when I was later on reflecting and contemplating, I came across this thing which our acharyas are explaining. Imagine in India, we go to a lot of this fair, right? There's a fair where we have gone. There are nice, all those merry-go-rounds, and there are a lot of trickeries and junkets which are sold, a lot of items which are sold. You are walking, you are amused, and you are seeing what you can tell to your brother, younger brother who's at home, that he should be interested to come. Or what you can tell, assuming that you are married, what you can tell to your wife, the things that attracts her, which are sold there, you can tell her that, she can come and buy those things. Or your small child, you can tell that there is a nice merry-go-round. When you are going and viewing the fair, you are seeing in a different vision. But imagine the same fair when somebody else goes, who's a tax collector. So he's saying, okay, this shop, I can get tax on this basis. He goes to another shop, he says, okay, this is tax exempt, probably I can't get tax from here. The same fair, when somebody goes with a different mindset, he sees differently. Similarly, the scientist's viewpoint is, to see how to make this work. But what the spiritualist is saying, it is not wrong. None of them is wrong. Spiritualists are trying to see what is the big purpose. Okay, this is made up of cross element. They want to show us another vision, another angle of another perspective which we are not aware of. And both have its own meaning. Usually people think that science and spirituality are mutually exclusive. I strongly differ, because there is a scientific way of understanding spiritual things. It is not some rituals, boring, monotonous, and something to be done in an old age. That's a very cliched understanding. That's a myth, actually. And in Bhagavatam, it is mentioned, Komaram acharit pragyam. At the tender age of 5, one should take up to spirituality. Okay, I'm seeing another question. What is consciousness? Is it some physical entity? It's a very interesting question. I mean, the inquiry that we should do in our life should go all the way up to Brahman. That's what the Vedanta Sutra says. Just to give you this small synopsis and a concise, brief answer, it's a big answer in itself, is in this material world, there are only two things. Only two things. One is matter, which doesn't have consciousness, like this table, the chair that I'm sitting in. And there is all of us who have got this consciousness, feelings, sentiments, emotions. We can feel, we can experience. Now, only these two differences. Now, the body that we have is sentient, is mobile, is animated because of the presence of the soul. Now, how do I, just because you are saying, why should I accept? Somebody may question. So then one has to see, cutting across all different religions, faiths, countries, nationalities, creeds, colors, whatever it is. When somebody dies, unanimously, we use this terminology, he or she has passed away. Doesn't matter who you are, which faith you belong to. This is a common thing which we hear. He or she has passed away. Who has passed away? The person whom you are saying he has passed away, his body is lying there. The same body with whom you used to interact, who used to walk, talk, eat, who used to embrace you, is lying there, no? What are you saying? Who has passed away? If this statement of yours is correct, that he has passed away, that means the thing which has passed away, I have never seen that. Because the person is lying there. That is the, actually that should, that is the beginning of the instruction in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is saying, somebody says, somebody thinks that this Bhagavad Gita is a sectarian book. Is it only meant for the Hindus? No, it is actually a very scientific book. It is the most researched religious text worldwide. The beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Dehinosmin yatha dehe komaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuhyati. One has to be a little sober and intelligent. He can easily get this. So he brings a difference between dehi and deha. Dehi and deha, if you see closely, like we say jnani and jnana. Jnani means the possessor of knowledge. Jnana is knowledge. Dhani and dhana. Dhani means the possessor of dhana. Wealthy and wealth. Or mani and mana. Mani means who's abhimani, mana is abhiman, like pride, and a person who's proud. So like that, he's saying dehi and deha, the possessor of the body and the body itself. There is a distinction which he brings. So that possessor of the body, the owner of the body, proprietor of the body, same word, is actually consciousness, which that consciousness in this life itself changes many bodies. All of us, when we were born tiny little. We had this body, and we have grown. Our bodies have grown. Now we have come to this particular stage, and this body for sure will not remain. This also will change. But the change happens so subtly, we don't realize it. But every time we think it is me only. I was the one who was going to that school. I was the one who was going there. I was doing this thing. This is my friend whom I'm meeting after 10 years, even though my body has changed. So that thing which is constant, which is permanent, which is not changing, is called the consciousness, is the Dehi. And Krishna says, in this life itself, when we are going through so many transformations, similarly, tatha, yatha and tatha always comes together in Sanskrit. Dehinosmin yatha dehe, komaram, yauvanam, jara. Like in this life, we are transforming bodies from komaram, yauvanam, jara, tatha. Like that, tatha dehantara. When a person dies, this consciousness goes to another body. The person who is sober, intelligent, tatha dehantara prapti dhiras tatra na muhyati. He does not get bewildered by this. This is the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. You can refer to second chapter. There is a series of verses which Krishna speaks to bring the difference between matter and spirit, between consciousness and which is matter, dull. Prabhuji, where Ramji and Krishnaji existent in this world, in this human form? Or there are only beliefs? Were the stories meant to symbolize the values of life, or has it happened in literal sense? This confusion is in the minds of many people. I will be grateful if you clear it. Okay, sure. Um, yes, they were present here, and these are all historically recorded incidents. One of the reasons why this kind of doubts come, why this kind of confusion happens, is these are not beliefs, because of this following this textbooks which were designed by the Britishers, where we use the word called mythology. Mythology comes from the word myth, which means it's not true. But unfortunately, that's not true. Actually, these are all historically recorded incidents. Lord Ram and Krishna were physically present here, and they enacted wonderful pastimes. And in Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned, Paritranaya sadhuna vinasaya chaduskritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. The Lord takes incarnation because He's very compassionate. He comes in this material world. Another mistake that we do is we think avatar, the word paritranaya sadhuna vinasaya cha duskritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. When the Lord descends to this material world, the word which is used is avataranam, and it has a different meaning compared to the word incarnation, which is the literal translation of that word. Avatar means to come down, tara means to protect, to deliver, avatara, to descend to deliver. Whereas the word incarnation has got the root word karne, which is related to body, like we have carnal desires, carnivorous animal. Incarnate means he takes a human form of life. He becomes like us. That's what we think. But his body, even though he takes the form like a human form, two-handed form, but his body is transcendental. It is not the same as that of any one of our bodies. And that is why when the Lord descends, many people mistake him to be an ordinary human being. Avajananti ma mudha manusim tanumashritam. Krishna says, Avajananti ma mudha. They don't realize, they don't understand. Avajananti ma mudha. Foolish people. Manusim tanumashritam. When we take this human form of life, we don't realize that. Krishna says his body is divyam, transcendental. It is not subject to the three modes of material nature. One has to see from the eyes of scripture, then this knowledge will be revealed clearly. Instead of seeing here and there and learning from different sources which confuse us more, we should read from the proper source. Then we will have no such confusion. Any other question here? Answered some of the questions. I don't see any other question. Did I miss any questions? Anybody's? I'm sorry if I'm just scrolling, but okay, I see. Kindly share your journey as a monk. This is one of the frequently asked questions to me. One of the most frequently asked. Interestingly, I had all those material aspirations and ambitions, which most of us have in life. I went to do my engineering from NIT Allahabad. Then I worked for the largest gas manufacturing company in the world. It's now known as Linde. Linde is a German company which produced the name comes from a German scientist who produced oxygen in a laboratory first. So that earlier, prior to becoming Linde, its name was VOC Gases, British Oxygen Company. So I worked there for 4 years, few months, maybe close to 5 years, in different positions, and it's very, very satisfying, very enriching. Then I did my MBA from SPJ Mumbai, and then I was working with Infosys. I switched job. I was with Intel. I was with Procter and Gamble. I was working in the US for some time. But the long story short, how did I take up to spirituality? It all started. I was always curious. I was always inquisitive to find out what is this creation all about? Why am I here? Is it just, am I supposed to just live my life the way I am living and then one day die? Is it what it is, or is there anything more to it? And then gradually I came in touch with Srila Prabhupada's book Bhagavad Gita as it is, which inspired me a lot. And then I took up with this process of spirituality. Often people think that you have to renounce so many things. You are in a good position. You had had some nice material education. Did you renounce? I mean, how was it painful? The answer is actually, which Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, and I'll come to that verse a little later. But what he tries to say is, imagine there is a beggar, and this beggar is subsisting on some food grains which are given by people randomly. Somebody gives something. Today I found some. The beggar finds some, some pieces of bread. Sometimes something else, and he's eating whatever it is. One fine day, one gentleman comes and tells him, from tomorrow onwards, you are guaranteed to going to get hot, nutritious food, freshly cooked, like paratha, paneer, and all those things. Will he ever go and beg to eat those food that he was doing earlier? He would never. The reason being, this is so satisfying and so nourishing. Like that, Krishna says, when somebody takes up to this path of spirituality, he experiences a higher taste. The experience is, the pleasure, the bliss that one experiences is of a different kind altogether. Now, once you experience that, will you go back to that old taste? You will not. And that's what Krishna exactly says in Bhagavad Gita. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasovarjam rasopyasya param drashtva nivartate. Once one experiences that higher taste, he does not go back to that old things that he was doing. Having said that, I want to just tell you that it is not like everybody has to change his dressing sense and take up this robe or live in a secluded place. That's what not spiritual life is all about. Wherever we are, whatever we are doing, continuing to do that, along with that, we can have a spiritual pursuits. It's the perspective which changes once we have understanding of spirituality. The way we look at things change differently, and it gives us tremendous spiritual strength to combat any kind of adversities and reversals in life. Hope that answers. Okay. If there are no further questions, should we stop here? So thank you very much for having me, and thank you for conducting this kind of talk shows. That actually we should be proud of our own cultural heritage. We should be proud of the wisdom which is left behind by the sages for the benefit of all of us, for all of our benefits. We should take advantage of them. My closing thought will be in Bhagavatam, very sobering thought is that it mentions that the time is acting on all of us, and it is irreversible. Irreversible means, in chemistry we would have heard this term. If you mix certain things and you get a product, you cannot go back to the original state. It is irreversible. Like that, the change which time brings on us is irreversible. It cannot be changed. And usually this transformation which happens is, it basically deteriorates. It is not a positive thing. A child definitely grows. A person definitely ages. Time takes away the vitality, it saps the vitality of our life. Having said that, if we learn how to spend our time properly, not just waste in all kinds of trivial and mundane pursuits, then we can utilize our life properly. It is not how long, how big our life is. It is how valuable it is, how meaningful it is. And this can happen if we spend some time in spirituality. As I mentioned, if we chant this Mahamantra, Hare Krishna Mahamantra, read books like Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, I will gain tremendously. There is no loss in this. The time is well spent because I get right thoughts, good thoughts, and it purifies my consciousness, gives me good vision. That is the best use of our life. Apart from all our other pursuits, nobody is saying one has to do this full time, but each one of us in our respective lives, we can be benefited from these practices. So thank you all very much for this opportunity. I'll be happy if you have any questions or you want to be in touch with me. Shailesh has all my details. You can take it from here. Hare Krishna.